All right, welcome back, everybody. Tuesday night, live from Redhook here at the Function House. Mike Gentile along here with Anthony Vitale. And tonight we would like to welcome our very special guest, Mr. Louie Corrales.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks
Welcome
for
to
coming
the
down,
show.
man.
Of course, pleasure to
Been-
be here.
It's been a long time.
I know, it's been a while.
So welcome, man. Welcome
Yeah.
to the Function House. Welcome to the show. We're really excited to have you play for us tonight.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it, man. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. It's good to be here.
You
Love
look
the
great,
place.
man.
Thank you. Thank you.
You
Thank
He
you.
don't
doesn't age,
He
right?
does not age.
I hear that a lot. It's all the sun and tanning. And
What are you eating? What?
everything. I eat everything.
So you're born and raised in Brooklyn?
Born and raised in Brooklyn in Bay Ridge. Grew up the old school way. You know how it is in the neighborhood. I feel like there was an era where
Hold the mic close.
all the DJs came out of Brooklyn and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So-
Yeah.
a lot of DJs came out of Brooklyn.
So what part of Bay? I live in Bay Ridge now. What part of Bay Ridge where are you
I
from?
grew up on 72nd.
Okay.
Right off of 7th.
Oh, all right. Okay. Do you still live in Brooklyn?
No,
or?
I live in Astoria in Queens.
Oh, so you
Yeah.
made the switch.
Yeah.
Savarian guy.
Yeah, that's right.
He used to walk to school, 72nd.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how'd you start DJing?
You want the long story or the short story?
Well, we got some time, you know.
So the short story was I used to listen to Hot 97, Glenn Frisch on Saturdays, right?
Who
And
didn't?
Who didn't, right? And then it was the only time you would hear house music. And I used to sit there and record the songs I liked, like with a tape deck. Just hit there and go, all right, Witch Doctor's on, boom, hit record. And I would know when it was about to be mixed in, and I would literally make my own mixtapes at that point. Little by little, I started discovering I could buy these things on vinyl. And next thing, I bought my first set of turntables, and just kind of that way, I did it more for myself, making my own mixtapes. and
Where'd
stuff
you
like
used to
that.
go record shopping?
Where everyone went, 8 Ball, Satellite, Decadence, those places.
Vinyl Mania.
Yeah.
I remember Decadence was like the king of the imports.
Oh yes.
They had the best import selection ever.
Yeah.
What was that on 14th Street?
Decadence.
Or 23rd Street?
It was 23rd.
23rd.
23rd. Yeah.
23rd Street.
It was so much easier back then.
Yeah.
You know, you go there, the guy's there spinning in the store, playing
Yeah.
the hottest tracks.
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
I need one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where you would walk in and they would be like, I know what you want. They would hold stuff for you and stuff like that. It was different time.
Yeah.
Now there's tons of remixes of everything, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough.
So growing up as a DJ, I remember you always playing out.
Yeah.
You wwere always in the house music scene from
Yep.
the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got kind of lucky where you didn't have to do like those other types.
You never
of
spun a hip hop record. right?
Well, when I first got into it, I bought everything, hip hop, reggae, the dance hall reggae that was big back then, the house music. But when I would go out, I would go to the house scenes, the clubs and all that stuff. That's really when I started kind of focusing on buying vinyl for that.
What
So
was your spot? What club?
to go out and have fun? Tunnel, Sound Factory, Twilo, Palladium, Expo. The first club I ever went to in the city was Octagon. You guys remember that one?
Yeah, I
Of
remember
course.
Octagon.
But the first club I ever went into, and I wasn't old enough to get into, was in Brooklyn. It was Plaza Suite, Apocalypse.
Yeah,
Remember that?
yeah.
Yeah.
So you used to go to that?
Of
part.
course,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
course,
yeah.
of course. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. So when
So I'm old.
So what DJ was it, or who was it that gave you the itch to start DJing?
It was a song. It was a track. It was by Victor Calderon. The track called "Give It Up."
Yeah.
And when I bought that vinyl, I remember putting it on my turntable and going, "What is this?" That was tribal and all that stuff. And I was like, I need to get into this more. This is, that's really what gave me the itch. But going out, it was hearing Danny at Tunnel, Junior at Twilo, Jonathan at Factory, hearing all that stuff, and going out and going like, what are these guys doing with these records?
And those were cult parties.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
people went religiously,
Uh-huh.
whether you went to Twilo or
Oh, yeah.
Tunnel.
Oh yeah.
Like religiously, people were there every Saturday
Yeah.
from open to close.
Yes. It was almost like a weekend job for me. Like I had to time out exactly how I was getting to each party, and because you wanted to make sure you were there for the peak hours, and you would tell, like to your point, you would tell people you'd get there, and you're like, oh, I was just over here, and they're like, oh, why'd you go there? I'm like, I want to hear music, right? Of course, to your point though, they were all about that one party that they were at.
Yeah.
So being in the game so long, DJing,
Mhm.
your style of music changes constantly. What are
Yeah.
you gravitating to now?
Definitely the tech house. To your point, obviously there's so many styles, and tech house has that wide spectrum, right? It's a mix between house and techno. So you get some of the tech house stuff that's more techno-y, and then
Yeah.
other stuff is more housey. So it's cool because you can, it's got a nice wide range, and you can kind of play within that range.
Yeah, I mean, tech house definitely matured as a genre.
Yes.
Like if you were to look
Yes.
at tech house, like what it was 12 years ago, it's
Right.
totally different.
No, it's
than what
yeah.
it-
and I
what
like
it
the
is
groovier
today.
stuff.
Yeah.
I like the stuff that makes you dance.
Yeah, that has like the swing.
Yes,
swing to
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So who first put you on as a DJ when you when you
Who
started?
was the first promoter to ever
like how'd you get your first gig, or say how'd you start breaking into the scene?
It happened with a buddy of mine. Some people might know who he is, John Paul Pezzo. I'm sure. Big promoter, does a lot of stuff in the scene. But it was him and I met on a trip up to Montreal. We were going to go see Danny at Stereo, and I was at the time making CDs again for myself. No idea that I was going to get into this, and people were pressuring him to be a promoter. He knew a lot of people, kid that went out to the scene and all that stuff. One thing led to another. He became a promoter, and his first party, he was like, all right, if I'm going to book somebody, I'm going to book my buddy Louie. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I think the first party actually was a friend of his opened up a restaurant and was like, we need to build a vibe around it. So he was like, just throw a party here. Put whoever the heck you want on. I was the lucky guy, I guess.
Nice. So you knew him before the whole promoting game.
But we knew each other before all of it. Yeah.
So you took a step back from DJing, like 2-year break.
About a 2-year break.
Why did you take a 2-year break?
To kind of like reset, right? Sometimes, how we were saying before, like you have to, you got to love what you do, right? You got to be inspired. And there was a time when creatively it just wasn't flowing for me anymore. So just took a break. I needed to take a step back, and somebody I respected said, you sometimes got to take a break, take a step back to appreciate what you have. But always had that itch. So when the itch,
You knew you were coming back.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I knew I was coming back, but some people are like, you never really left. You never said goodbye, to your fans and stuff like that. So I guess you could say that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard. I think for me personally, I don't think I could ever walk away from the game completely.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I guess for you, if you still go out and listen to DJs, you go into a nightclub,
Yes.
and you hear like
Yeah.
say Danny playing, and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, this is
Yeah.
like I got to get myself back in, right?
Yeah, I do, and that's what it is. Like people don't realize. Like I like to go out. I like to listen to music. I like to hear what's going on. The younger generation always asks me like, you got any tips, any advice? And I tell them, don't stop being a fan. Do it because you love it. You got to be passionate about this.
So taking a step back, did you still go out? Did you still
Yes.
rub shoulders?
Oh yeah. I still went out.
What did you miss the most about DJing?
It's the interaction with the fans. I would say my favorite part of DJing is literally playing, and you guys know how it is when you're it's a set and you're locked in with the fans where they're feeding off of you and you're feeding off of them. That's really what I miss the most.
Yeah,
and it doesn't happen every gig, right? But it does happen. When it does happen, it's
it's
the best high in the world.
You're always going to
It
have the
is.
duds.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The empty rooms or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. But, the whole joy of being a DJ is when
Yes.
you have that crowd and they're
Yeah.
just really appreciating what you're doing
Yeah.
as an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Production,
Yeah.
making records.
Yes. So that's another thing that that is part of the game, and I enjoy doing. And I got a few things coming out with a few local labels. One already got signed to Transmit, working on stuff with international labels as well. But yeah, things will start coming out.
So did you produce before you took this break, right?
Yeah. Stuff came out on Stereo, Transmit, Nervous. I'm trying to think what other labels. A lot on those.
What record worked the best for you?
Of mine? Oof, that's a tough one.
Well, what record did you like the most?
Probably the first one that I put out that was like the big hit for me. It came out on Stereo. It's called Music Is My Life. It's kind of a throwback Obviously, it's an old CNC Music Factory sample.
Yep.
And that's what I wanted. I wanted to do something a little vocally, you know, with a little tribal. It had a little bit of everything. That's probably the one that was the biggest one for me.
And that was a great line to sample.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
We were just talking about that before the show.
Yeah.
So obviously you have a long history
Mhm.
in New York City nightlife. What are some of the, the parties that you really loved playing?
In the past,
Yeah.
well, one we were talking about again, Spider Room. Although it was a small party, it was really the one that kind of launched this whole
Limelight
thing.
was amazing.
Yeah, it was in Limelight, right? It was in the one of the small chapels. Crowbar New Year's Eve, I did one year. That was amazing.
It was
right?
insane,
Yeah,
right?
it was insane. I mean, by 10:30, the place was jam packed, right? Yeah, obviously, and doing the parties in Miami for conference, like the Get Wet parties with Boris and stuff like that. Those were phenomenal too.
Yeah.
That was a long run. That
Yeah.
Get Wet party.
Yeah.
And you got to play some really great house music, right?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So the first, like, how did that name Get Wet come about? Was it because of the first party, the downpour that happened during that first party? Because I was there. I was at that party.
I don't know how it came around. I remember it was the first Get Wet party kind of happened like it came together kind of last minute. I remember I think it was like February, because conference is always like the third week in March. And I think February they started tossing around the idea of putting together the party. And it was at the Sagamore, I think it was. No, it was the Sagamore, yeah. And it was on a Tuesday, if I remember correctly, or a Wednesday or something like that. And there was one other party that went on, and I think it was a hip-hop party. And it was kind of right before when everyone got there. And again, last minute they put it together, and it was a rager for a party that was put together about a month before. And it blew out whatever party else was going on that day. And then after that, I think they moved it to Saturday. And, that's always the biggest day,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, that was a go-to party at the conference
Yep,
for,
yep.
for many years.
Yep.
Are you still going to the conference?
Yeah, I was just there this past March. Played at the Transmit party at Hart, so yeah, it
Yep.
was good.
How was the conference, for real?
It's different. It's not like what it used to be, where like we were saying, it's about networking. You're still rubbing elbows, but it's just different. It's more, the parties are more branded, and I don't want to say it's gotten more commercial, but it's just not like what it used to be.
I call it the spring break for adults.
It really is. It really is, right? Because you have Ultra that goes on, and that's the big attraction, and then you got all the pool parties and everything else, and it's really about the day events now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So who are some of the DJs that you might look up to now, or follow, listen
Yeah.
to their music?
Yeah, it's tough. It's funny you say that, because I was thinking about that, and a lot of them I consider them friends of mine now, right? Like, these are guys that I look up to, or that I just bounce ideas off of. So some guys that I still look up to musically, I would say like Danny, right? Danny Tenaglia. He's the guy that you gotta always go see, because he's always at the forefront of stuff like that. But guys that I consider friends are guys like Boris, Richie Santana. These are guys that every now and then I'll just bounce ideas off of. I'll send them tracks, or even just shoot the shit with them and see what's going on.
Yeah. And they're still both playing a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to production for a second. What are you using to make these tracks?
So I start off with Ableton. I've gone skinny, for lack of a better term, right? I used to have a huge setup with everything outboard and stuff like that. Everything's in the laptop now. I use Ableton. I use a small Akai MK2 25 key. Everything's internal. And then when I'm ready to bring it out and mix it out, I'll go to a studio, rent out some space, and then get it going that way.
Do you tap Anthony Acid? A lot of people tap him to go use his studio.
I haven't, but yeah, he's always
He's
there.
itching for people to
Yeah.
check out his new studio.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
So in the genre of music that you're focused on, what are the labels that are putting out, or where are the labels that you're trying to get your records out?
Let's see. So the top labels obviously are the labels like Jamie Jones's label, Hot Creations, right? There's Kaluki Records, Repopulate Mars. I'm trying to think of some other ones, but there's just a ton of labels now too.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
there's millions.
Yeah, millions of labels.
And as far as management, are you signed to anybody? Like,
Just
who's your
working.
team?
Just working with Adrian Hoda, who's over there in the back somewhere, and John Paul Pezzo. That's it, the old school team.
So how did the conversation go when you wanted to get back into the game? Was it like,
Well,
hey,
who
how
made
did
that
whole-
conversation happen?
how'd that whole thing come about?
It's funny because when I decided to take a break, I told Pezzo, I was like, listen, I don't, I'm good. It happened around music conference because we started talking about that, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to go this year. And he was like, all right. And then from there, he kind of realized that I was taking a break. But little by little, he was always like, if you ever want to get back in, he was always like kind of nudging me. And then one day I told him, I said, you know what, I think I want to make another run. And he was like, all right, whenever you're ready, let's go. And then I thought about it for some more and then just pulled the trigger.
I think you jumped in at a great time.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
And I think you've already played some pretty big gigs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm lucky.
Yeah, you did a night at you've worked at Szymanski's, right?
Szymanski's, right.
And they seem to be picking up speed. Like
Yeah.
they seem to be doing some really good parties now.
Yeah.
You know, it took a little while for them to get off the ground, but it looks like they're
doing their thing.
Yeah.
They're right around the block from Output, right? So it's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of competition in that area.
Yeah.
But it looks like they're turning the corner.
Yeah.
How's the sound system?
In there, it's phenomenal. It's an ideal club. It's a DJ's dream, right? You got 4 walls. It's really just one room. In the system, you stand on the dance floor, it kicks.
Yeah.
I like that room. I really do.
So what's up next in terms of gigs?
Gigs next Thursday, Output Rooftop, and then on Sunday I'll be in Miami at 1-800-LUCKY.
Good,
Wow.
man. Keep him busy. I like that.
So you're coming back strong,
Yeah.
man. For taking a little hiatus. It's good to hear, and it's good to see you back in the game.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for coming down, bro.
Of course.
We're excited to hear you play.
Yeah, I'm looking
We're
forward.
going to take a 2-minute break. I'm going to get Louie Corrales up on the set.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.